Do you want to? Sure. All right. Are we recording?
This might be
with the boys.
Oh, the
I know I'm
boys.
over with the girls.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I'm gonna have you move anyway, so it's okay. So you're.
Okay, wait, hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Come here. Oh, you already started recording. Sorry. My bad. Go ahead.
All right. So today I'm gonna talk to you about the book Fairies and Always Equal, chapter 13 and 14. So I know it's been a little bit of a while, so this might sound. I feel like his book spirals back to the idea of averaging is not a good thing. Mode, focus on the mode. What is the student consistently being portraying in class or demonstrating as a mastery for the skill? But I'm going to talk to you about honor roll and averaging today. So those were the two chapters that really focused on. They were pretty short, but they had a lot of information condensed into one. I like almost highlighted almost every other word because it was so important. So today. Okay. I tested it. Okay, hold on.
Technology's great until it isn't.
Do you want me to sit over there?
There. Okay. So today I did like a team huddle. So we're going to go over 4 things. I have an engager for you. We're going to talk about chapter 13, which is the honor roll. We're going to talk about averaging and a little activity that I have for you. And then chapter 14 when it's talking about stopping averaging. Okay? Okay. So I have a little video that I want you to think about these questions before I show you. How are honor rolls hours used every, how long, how do we give them every quarter, I think? Every progress report? What is the purpose? Are they effective? Why or why not? Okay.
Beth Tillich's middle school son made the honor roll, but she's not happy about it. That's because there were C's and D's on his report card. Tillich says that is not honor roll work.
The bottom line is there's nothing honorable about making a D. I was not happy. Because how can I get my child to study for a test when, he thinks he's done enough?
The school principal explained that making the honor roll is based on a system of points, and an A grade can overcome even an F. The entire issue may soon be academic, as the school district is discussing a complete change in the honor roll system.
So I'll go back to the questions actually. So think back about those questions on the video you just saw. What do you guys think? I saw your facial expression finally, like, what? Is this mom just...
Well, I would be curious to know how he got on honor roll with a D.
Well, the school district was saying that the average of those scores, like an A can outdo a D if they average out. So he had more A's than the D's and F's, so that's why he was on an honor roll. But for the mom, her whole argument was, well, how can I expect my kid to do more if he's saying, well, I'm on an honor roll, so I'm one of the good kids. Why does it matter?
Well, and some schools don't include non-academic classes into the average, which again is, the whole point would be to be a well-rounded student and to have above the average for all these classes.
Well, going with that, I don't know, I haven't actually sat down and thought about like how does our GPA or honor roll come into being, but how do we think it affects our kids? Positively, negatively?
Well, I don't know. They were already ranking themselves today.
Yeah, they were.
Our seniors were ranking themselves according to GPA. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I hadn't seen them do that before.
Yeah.
It was probably because I was talking to Paige and in her transcript this is the rank. So I didn't want to show her, but then she was really persevering. I'm like, I need to know.
And I know at some of the bigger schools, the kids will play the game. They won't take some of the classes at the comprehensive high schools. They'll take them at COC so they can get the 5 instead of the 4. or they'll ask that, you know, ASB is pass or fail, because then it won't be only worth a 4, because they want that rank, because you actually sit in order of your rank, it goes on your college transcripts. Here, they're not competing for, you know, the elite colleges, but it becomes like a mental health issue, a true mental health issue when they're ranked like that, especially if you're in one of the top.
So do you think that when we do the honor rolls in our meeting and we pass out those awards, is that beneficial or not beneficial?
I think it comes back down to kind of like how we were saying, clearly defining our feedback to them, and this is almost giving them a status. And then so once you're given a status, you're either you either now have to hold that status to stay good, or you're not good enough because you haven't made that status. So it's not necessarily clear enough on what your feedback is and how you're succeeding and where you're failing, or you know, need improvement. So it's nice to hear, yeah, you're an honor roll student, but what are you doing good? What are you doing bad? Or what do you need to improve? What you don't? You know, what's your strength?
Well, and I think also for us it's tied back to their PPM, right? So if they don't have a certain GPA, it's like maintained. They can't move up levels.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they can load up in 60 days, but they're still stuck in that level.
Right.
So, okay. Sorry, I'm gonna make you dizzy for a second. Okay. All right. So chapter 13 was saying that honor roll for him, for Romley, there's little to no purpose of the honor roll. In fact, it hurts their progress in the long run. That some of the kids, in this specific scenario that he was talking about, he said that so most of the time the kids that were on the honor roll got invited to like a big luncheon or like a, I don't know, like lunch with the principal, or they got like to be out for a certain period. So the kids that he was left with, the kids that were not in the honor roll, and then slower and slower there were more kids in there, and they were just looking at him like, what are you going to tell us to make us feel better about it? Because we know we're not those good kids, so what are you going to tell us to make us feel better? And he's like, I ended up with nothing to say, because in reality is they didn't make the cutoff, but I'm still here to teach them. So in the longer run, I ended up doing some other stuff that it was just kind of like a band-aid for them. And he was saying that it's all about GPA. It's not about achievement and mastery of skills to him. It's more about what point average did you get? All going back to the average of the scores. And maybe that kid that got D's and F's ended up in the honor roll, and I got 1 F or whatever, but I'm still not good enough to be in the good kids group. And then this was one quote from one of the students that he asked, is just one more way to sort us out, which I thought was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. It's one more way of them to put a label on us that we're not in the honor roll, we're not the honor roll kids. What do you guys think?
Well, I think it all depends on how you define honor roll, or how the particular site defines honor roll. And that goes back to schools forever and ever and ever. Are you assessing students, or are you sorting them? And how do the students perceive that? That was a big deal when I was in school. And no, I never made honor roll, I don't think. And my grades weren't bad, but that was perceived as, you got to do a really special job. I don't know how much lower the bar is now.
Well, they still use that kind of rank system though, even when they get into college.
Yeah.
So
and it gets put on your degree, some
but that could also look nice on a resume too, right? Because it shows that you're willing to really bust butt and work hard to be a high achiever. I don't know.
Here's my question: are we focusing on GPA and a number, or master of skill? Are we really? Is that going on your resume because the employers are actually looking at it for a skills perspective, or because you just managed to get a good test score, you're a good test taker or something like that?
There were universities. I know my sister-in-law went to Santa Cruz before she went to med school, and they didn't have grades. It was all commentary. on how you did in the class, and there were no grades. And they tried that for a while, where you didn't have a number assigned to you. And, you know, that got her into UCLA Med School without a GPA, without a grade point average. I mean, of course, we're not there now, but that was someone that dabbled in that system that wasn't ranked that way. And so you just had to read about, you know, how you mastered the content at that university. So I don't know if that school still does that, but that was a big UC.
To look it up.
Yeah.
Well, his outcomes in terms of what he thought was interesting for the kids, that they actually saw GPA as currency, like how many more grades can I get to get more stuff, to get more goodies, to get more access to things. So it wasn't like, because I am trying to better myself, this is just what am I going to use my GPA for? How can I exchange my GPA for something else? And then also another way to sort them in the successful versus not successful category. They weren't seeing it as a way to improve themselves at all. And then in terms of grades, going back to what I said earlier, for employers, they use it to determine who they can hire or not. So sometimes they might even ask them, like, what is the class that you really struggle with, and how do you deal with the challenges that you face in the class versus what is this class that you really, really excel at, and then show me those grades. But again, is that mastery, or is that just averaging out test scores, or whatever it may be? Is that really a reflection of what they can do, or it's just the number? And then for them, grades should actually be able to give feedback. It's all about feedback. Am I actually mastering that criteria or not? Am I actually meeting the standards or not? And then here's a question for you. What's so wrong with a student that he couldn't make it to the list? If we are categorizing people between successful and not successful, what's wrong with them that they couldn't make it to that list? What do you think?
Well, the student that's so close that just missed it by a point, you know, I missed one of my C-sets by 2 points, and that was so painful when you work so hard for something. So it's saying you work so hard, but just not enough. So for some kids, that may be encouraging, that they know they just need to work a little bit harder, but to some, it may just make them like defeated and shut down.
I would probably rephrase the question though, because it's not that there's anything wrong with the student. It's maybe what the student didn't do to, you know, where did the student fall? What's lacking, but not what's wrong with the student.
Great you pointed out. And I put this on purpose because I didn't write this question. That was the question that Wormley wrote. That is the question that the kids ask themselves.
That's the question. Oh, okay.
That's the question that kids ask themselves all the time. What's wrong with me that I can't make it to that list?
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was on purpose. Yeah.
Yay.
And then some suggestions that he brought up are like, bring them, instead of giving them an award, a paper, what about if you're able to master this, you are able to pick out what new materials we can buy for the school in terms of art projects and stuff like that. Maybe if you master the criteria, we're able to have an art wall with your artwork. If you're meeting standards and skills, maybe we can spotlight you in the news article in our journalism class. Maybe this was interesting. Get you a 1-year subscription to an appropriate magazine. Some of these kids don't have an access to get that. Maybe educational value. And then a book of their choice for the school library. Maybe it's a book that they can't afford on their own, but if you can have it and it's part of the school. And he even said that you can get them to write, this book was donated in the name of blah, blah, blah. And that is something that is here forever, and they will remember that. So I thought that was pretty cool. And there's a huge list if you want to look at it, but these were some, in page 182, there was maybe 60 of them. I just picked 5 that stood out to me. And then interesting to me was he didn't put any food options in there, and the reason for that, he said, why should we continue to put out food options if we're dealing with so many eating disorders along the way.
And you mean as a reward, like buying
As a
lunch or
reward for
something like
mastery,
that, right? Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, which then that day I had bought candy for my Quizlet, and I was like feeling really upset. I didn't even think about that, but yeah. So he said, let's try to make other outlets of positive reinforcement other than food because of all those eating disorders that we're struggling with. Okay, so I'm gonna have you move. Okay, so I need 2 groups. So there's actually 7 of you, so we're participating. Okay, so 3 of you and 3 of you, and then I'm going to give you some scenarios. I'm gonna give you directions once you're in your teams.
So we don't really.
Okay. Yeah.
Are they in order of when you got them?
That's just his report card.
Oh, this is his report card. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
So what would you average it at then? Like that's what the teacher submitted as the score, as the test, or
The grade.
the grade. So you have to average it out. What's
So these are all the same class, just at like different test scores.
no different classes.
Gotcha. Percentages.
Okay. Do you mind reading your scenario, Priscilla?
Yeah, Bruno is a child of a Hispanic mother and Vietnamese father. His mother speaks Spanish at home, but understands English and can speak well. His father speaks English well, but rarely attends conferences. Bruno was born in the U.S., but has learning difficulties due to lack of oxygen at birth. He is the youngest of 3 children and the only boy. He had difficulties feeding at birth and had to be fed with a feeding tube until age 11. He is currently in 10th grade and has the following grades. 2 A's, 2 F's, and 1 B. So 2 4s, 1 3, and 2 0s.
So you actually guys had the same grades, but I gave them the GPA, and then I gave you guys the percentage. So what letter did you give your person?
Oh, a C.
A C?
Well, a C plus.
A C plus? Okay. Okay, do you mind reading yours, Raskin?
Sure. Bob is a child of a German mother and an Italian father. Both parents speak their primary language and English at home. Bob knows 3 languages and speaks them fluently. Both parents are involved. They volunteer whenever possible and attend all meetings. He is a middle school child of 3, 1 older sister and 1 younger brother. He has an SLD, but has managed to stay in a general's education class with some accommodations. He is currently in 10th grade and has the following grades.
So what grade did you guys give him?
I think, we still have C.
A C?
Yeah.
Just so you guys know, this team had like B at first if he was the last grade standing, and then they averaged it out and it was a D, and then they ended up with a C. So this was a little bit more challenging. How did you guys come up with yours?
Well, we
averaged it. Yeah, so we did the average. We also took into consideration that would have put him about at a C, but we thought with what he has going on, he's probably EL. So we bumped it up a little bit, giving him some
We assumed
grades.
something.
No,
You assume
You know what that means.
So here's what Wormley would say. You guys had the same grades and you guys thought about differently. We can't leave the grade up to subjectivity because then it's not really saying to the student what actually they're doing in class for you. And it's a little bit challenging when you average it out. You might get 3 different grades, or you might get 1, and you're like, well, but I feel like this student can do it's a little bit better, and you bump them up. When in reality, if they get a C, that's their C, and that's it. There shouldn't be a question about where they are. Okay. What was that for?
Well, it goes back to the question that Dr. Nicholas was talking about in terms of what was it? The college was Santa Cruz, about giving a grade versus giving an opinion, description, and assessment based on a human factor as opposed to a numerical factor.
That's true. I would love to see what kind of feedback it was, or was it how reliable.
But a
valid.
GPA is apples and oranges with taking one subject. And say if this is one subject and his last test assessment was a B for the semester, then I'm going to go with the B. He mastered that much. But if we're doing a GPA for different classes, that's something different.
That is different.
And do you think that we should be averaging out PE with art, English, history, and science? Is it the same level of rigor for all those classes?
It could be.
For all students?
It could be. It really depends. Because I know when we've done PE in the past, where they have a written final of all the information that because all the body parts, muscle groups, nutrition, and that final could bump them up. If they're getting a B, they can get an A.
He's grading all classes, so he gets to determine students.
That's true.
Move from teacher to teacher, so every teacher has their own definition of rigor or level of rigor.
So for you, but you also might teach differently every subject. It might not be the same, consistency where you are.
Pretty consistent.
With everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can ask them. They're pretty consistent.
I'm direct.
Well,
they don't like it. But.
I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So, averaging actually leads to inaccurate reports. So, like you said, if you had different ideas, they had C+, they had C, B, and D. At some point, we can't really make instructional decisions based on that. Some of you guys said, well, he's CL, he might be okay. Here's like, well, what about decoding? I would look to see where he's struggling on. You don't really know, just looking at the numbers and the letters, where the kid's struggling. And in reality, you should be looking at the score and say, okay, this is the area of need where we need to provide support. And then for the students, it's just a game system. How am I going to play the game to get a better score? I remember vividly having Paige walk in here and say, I need paper last semester. And I'm like, why do you need paper? And it's really angry. Because I am having a B in art and I need to pass art. So I need paper, I need to bump up my grade. And so she was playing the game, right? What else can I do to move up that ladder? Not every student's that way, but so okay, so averaging scores is like comparing apples to oranges. So if I took a test, if I had a student take the test right now and I had them take it tomorrow, the same test, I wouldn't be able to compare them at all either, because the student might have studied, the student might have also developed a little bit more over time. So in reality, he's saying you cannot compare as test score over time over and over again. So if you average it out, unless it's the same criteria and you like stop time and have the student take it all over again, then you cannot compare them. You can see growth over time, but you can't say that student is able to, how do I put it? Sorry. Yeah.
So you're saying, like when I allow test corrections or, to retake the same test, I give them the score that they get after the corrections. I don't average out the two. And I give them whatever they get on that second test, as long as it's better. I don't average them out. I give them,
yes,
you just got 100% after getting, an 85.
Which is exactly what you should be doing. You shouldn't be going back and saying, well, they got a D and now they got an 8, so now they're at a B. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because you can't compare those two test scores because there was some factors in between that could have affected it. Maybe yesterday he didn't get to sleep and now he did. Maybe yesterday he didn't get to eat breakfast, now he did. Maybe yesterday he didn't study, but now I like crammed 3 hours of studying before that test. Does that make sense?
Yesterday he didn't smoke pot, today he did and got better.
Hopefully not. Right? Okay. And then grades must be have some kind of level of integrity. So you need to be able to look at, okay, maybe they did worse. What happened? Was it because we guessed a lot last time and we just kind of got it, or now something else happened outside, right? Because usually we don't see kids dunk. We see them a little bit or similar or stay the same. Yeah.
Well, there's a few kids that I've noticed that if they don't think that they know it at all, they won't even try.
That's very common.
You know what I mean? Because they would rather say, "Oh, I didn't do it because I didn't want to do it," instead of doing it and not doing well.
I can tell you, I have vocabulary tests, and I have 2 or 3 kids that are like, I'm like, "Are you ready?" "No, I don't think I'm ready." And then next day, "Are you ready?" "I'm not ready." I said, "How about you try it out, test it out, see how you do, and then let's not count this one unless we do good, and then we'll retake it." So I put it that way where it's like, I won't give you the score when in reality I am writing down how they're doing, so that way they're like, okay, it's a risk that I'm taking, but without taking a risk. So for them, it's like, I'm gonna dab, but I'm not going to ask the grades. So I want you to work with your team to average out those grades, and you're going to give me an overall grade for the semester for the student.
We have to average them, or we look at the grades and tell you?
You're going to look at the grades, and you are going to determine what is the average of that student.
Determine the average or the grade?
Or what we would give them as a
grade.
A grade, okay.
A grade. Actually,
But like we do our averaging here different because like some places you would get like sort of that B plus, B minus.
Do we get any other information?
That's all here. Just but in college, yeah, minus.
And then A plus is
so
like
give me a letter grade.
For like an overall letter grade that you would get
Right,
for high school
but
grade.
if this was one class, I would have.
You wouldn't give him a C.
No, not if these are the testimonials.
It's hard to tell because what's what class, so if these are both science and math, and this is English and history, then we understand that they're doing great numbers in science and applying that, and say they struggle with decoding this whole comprehension. You know, and this might be a
Yeah, I
combination
mean,
of,
when you average
that's
out,
why it's struggling a little bit with some of the strength. But yeah, but
But he started with
it's just above a C. Yeah.
it feels almost to read
just
like,
about-
see, this is the concept, try.
It's not like,
But he also want to do growth, like in Wormley's world.
well,
Wormley's world.
Oh, so
More of these.
that's
But
But it's different classes. It's not one. Yeah.
Then I would say,
C would be average, yes.
those two things are maybe.
Yeah, because I would average these two together. So like, I mean, yeah, average.
how's his mother?
Well, I mean, I think automatically if their first language was.
I'll give you 30 seconds.
They're considered English unless they test it right. Then based on what you see and hear, even for kids with really learning difficulties, it's really hard to test that.
I'm comfortable with giving him a bump.
Well, I mean, yeah.
If those were your test scores, how else would you put it?
They were test scores for one class. Okay.
No particular order.
No particular. Well, then I would say they did better on more tests than on.
Okay.
So a passing. Still
I
don't
mean,
know.
Passing grade?
Yeah.
What
I mean,
passing
still-
grade would it be?
Oh, man.
I mean, in our.
You do a B?
Yeah, would be, because then it's,
Work.
they mastered it
Yeah.
pretty dang good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either they
It's pulled out of those classes, there's all sorts of.
Right, so then that would be averaged, right? Yeah, it would be averaged out.
But then, but some teachers actually weighted. So I mean, you just gotta get an assignment, that'd be a test.
If all of them were tests.
You weighted different.
If all of them were tests though, so then they're all assessments, so they all have to be weighted similarly. Well,
Hold on, we're finishing our discussion on this.
oh, did you add up the numbers? Yeah.
Shouldn't be blaming our students or us because our technology is not supporting our philosophy. So most of us have talked about how Infinite Campus can do standardized based grading, and it does average it out in there, but we shouldn't be relying on that. That's what he's saying. Like we should be asking those companies or finding a way for it not to average out, because in reality we are the ones responsible for the grade, not the computer, not the system. Which I thought was interesting. And if Castaic, it's all good. If Castaic High School figure it out for us, then I think it would be an idea to collaborate with them and figure it out. How did they put it in the system? Because even now I can't seem to get it how they did it. And then in the overall use mode, what is the consistent over time that they're able to show you mastery of the skill as opposed to average out? Because at the end of the day, it's not inaccurate, it's not showing an integrity on your part, and it is also not showing mastery. Yeah. And that is all. All right.
It's actually